Well, hello guys, how are you doing? I hope you are doing well. It's Kristi. I'm trying to figure out where I'm supposed to look. I've changed my setup. Yet again. Words are hard today. Anyway, I kind of changed my setup a little bit, which should make it nicer, but it also means a little bit of fiddly a bit. So hello guys, happy Sunday. I hope you are having a lovely day. So far I am. I woke up very naturally, like with the sunlight. Not too early, not too late. Had plenty of time to make some coffee, tidy up my house. So weekends is the time where I put aside blocks of time to do bits of aufräumen, putzen, as they say in German, tidying up and cleaning. And I do sort of blocks on a Saturday, blocks on a Sunday, and then I feel like I've done my bit for the week. And then when I'm tired, I just have to keep up with the basics. So, oh yeah, my, what do they call it? You Are Here collection as well. So I've got that, got my coffee, got my house tidy, and I'm all ready for a show. So how are you guys? I already asked how you were doing. I'm okay. It's been a week. It's been a bit crazy, if I'm honest, when it comes to the Trump stuff. Well, what did we find out this week? Other than the campaign chairman handed off sensitive polling data to the Russians in order to help the president, help Trump win the election by undermining, the integrity of the election. We found out Michael Cohen is going to go before Congress and testify like a mofo, sing like a bird, be all about that Trump, whatever Trump did, while they were together. That's not currently under investigation. And then over the weekend, the New York Times notified us that, in fact, the FBI has viewed Trump as a potential unwitting and perhaps witting asset of the Russians for a long time now. This is an insane crisis in in our constitutional system. At this point, we just need to impeach him. I mean, the House has to vote to impeach what the Senate does. The Senate can do what the Senate's going to do. Mitch McConnell can bear the weight of history on that issue, but there's really no reason to not start impeachment hearings and proceedings now and just be open about it. The man is a threat to our constitutional structures, to our liberties, and to the norms that have held us together. So I'm going to check in with the chat a little bit, you guys. 4 thumbs down. Yeah, haters gonna hate, guys. That's just it. When I see the thumbs down, honestly, I laugh. Because if you're so pathetic that you're gonna haunt some rando's YouTube channel so you can vote down her video, just be like, me! I would have voted down. Yeah, go ahead, you little smurf. Little small, actually we'd be like a green smurf because you're like all jealous and petty and you can't do anything except hit a thumbs down button. So yeah, like hate is gonna hate. Just don't even worry about them. Yeah. So how we got? Oh, it's a very intimate crowd. 6 people. How you guys doing? No. Actually, I want to start before we get on with the Trump stuff and everything else. I want to do a little bit of social science moments. There we go. Can you guys read that, or is that backwards? No, it's right. It's backwards in my phone, but it's rightwards in my screen. So that's very exciting. Someone mentioned that they had watched my series, which I stopped doing because it was basically just giving lectures for an hour, and that wasn't so exciting. And what I thought might be fun is if every once in a while I can pick up some points here about the social sciences and how knowledge is constructed. So things that I've already covered are like positivism, the emergence of the idea that the scientific method could be applied to the social world initially as people started to try to systematically understand human behavior. However, as we found out, there are some problems with empiricism and positivism. So I'm just going to do a short little passage here from, Ted Benton and Ian Craib's book, Philosophy of Social Science, The Philosophical Foundations of Social Thought. And this is published by Palgrave Macmillan. And the year of publication here is 2001. So not too old. Still a little bit dated. But philosophy, it's like wine or cheese. It keeps, So before we move on to Trump stuff, some problems of empiricism. Concepts and experience. the empiricist view that all knowledge is acquired by experience and that there are no innate ideas has been called into question by developments in a number of disciplines. Noam Chomsky, widely regarded as the founder of contemporary scientific approaches to language, has argued that the child's experience of language is far too limited and fragmentary for us to explain language acquisition in empiricist terms. Our ability to produce an indefinite number of well-formed sentences presupposes not just an innate disposition to learn language, but also innate knowledge of the depth grammar common to all languages. Much more controversially, self-styled evolutionary psychologists and sociobiologists argue that many of our basic thought processes and behaviors are expressions of our genetic inheritance. See Pinker, 1997. However, even if we are skeptical of these claims, even if we are skeptical of claims such as these, there are other sources of evidence which suggest that knowledge acquisition can't just be a matter of recognizing patterns regularly in the flow of sensory experiences. One very telling illustration is given by the case study reported by Oliver Sacks, a neurolinguist whose work was concerned with helping people who suffer from various kinds of brain damage. One of his patients was referred to him by an ophthalmologist, and we won't go into this, but basically what he comes down to is, Sacks' unfortunate patient was someone who, although he had good eyesight, had lost the ability to make sense of how the flow of visual impressions he was undoubtedly receiving how to make sense of it. This sort of case illustrates the complex and preconscious mental activity of selecting and interpreting sensory inputs, which goes into quote-unquote normal visual experience. Our ability to identify people, recognize faces, interpret a landscape, and so on is not just a matter of having sense organs which are in good working order, but also involves active processes of conceptual ordering and interpretation of which we are mostly unaware. So, there we go. Empiricism seems to make sense on its face, but then we take a lot of things for granted, that the experience is universal, that it somehow doesn't have its own processes underneath it that should be questioned and understood as pre-packaging information in ways we're sort of predisposed to consume. So, there you go. A little bit of nerdiness on the Sunday morning. Social scienceism. Oh, yes. Socialism and social scienceism. Coincidence? I think not. Right. So, just a little bit about, you can get pretty deep into this stuff, and most people don't. Okay, so moving beyond a bit of a social science moment. A little bit of fun too before we start with Trump. I need a little warm up before I can go into my shtick. Otherwise, I just start up and get frustrated. I watched the Batman Lego movie last night, and it was awesome. It was really good. I started it so late, I didn't finish it. I started to drift off to sleep, and I didn't want to kind of not enjoy it fully. So what I do is, my little trick is I'll go back to the start of the movie and put it on really softly, and then I fall asleep to it the second time around. But oh my gosh, yes, Lego Batman movie on Netflix. So much fun. I definitely recommend it. And also I started to binge I watched like several episodes and I already forgot the name of it. What's the new WB, the Warner Brothers Netflix series that they literally just brought out this weekend? I think it starts with a V. Anyway, that was alright. Let's see if I can find it on here. It's not even showing up in my mentions or my trendings or anything now, but it's the new Marvel series. It was, I thought some of the acting was good. I thought some of the dialogue was kind of weak. I thought some of the story was pretty good. So like a 7 on 10. Definitely not as good as the Lego Batman movie. That was way better. But the Marvel thing wasn't bad. It was, I think I would rate it under Flash. If you think about the TV series Flash and its first season, I'd put it just under there because I think the first Flash was really good. All right. Is it time to get into the shit? I think it's time to get into the shit. Let's transition away from the cozy fire into... wrong headline to start with. Nice one, Kristi. And this isn't even also the one I wanted. Dang it. Where's my New York Times? Sorry. I thought in my history I went to New York Times, FBI. FBI investigates. Sorry about this, guys. I thought I had this all set up before I went on air, and I picked the wrong article. Ugh. Alright, we'll just go here. Screw. I don't even like using the New York Times anyway because they count the number of times I use an article per month, and at least with the Washington Post, I've got the subscription, so I can look at it as many times as I want to and display it. We talked about what a crazy week it's been, right? The president is, I'd call him a Manchurian candidate, but he wasn't hypnotized. It wasn't secret. He did everything out in the open. Donald Trump ran for president to use that position to leverage influence to make to build a hotel in Moscow and probably make money in other ways. That was his goal for running for president. It was a marketing exercise. We see this a lot with Republicans, to be honest. Mike Huckabee used the presidential process to sell his crap. Newt Gingrich used the presidential process to sell his books. Tim, who is a guy, the 999? Is it not Tim Kaine? There's another guy who also ran and was basically just promoting his TV show. There's a big problem in the GOP with candidates who aren't serious candidates. They're marketing, their business, they're con men. I guess is a better way to say it. They're con men, and they're using the opportunity to run for president as a free media strategy. The problem was Putin actually was interested in helping Trump, and the Republicans were so... how should I put this? The Republican Party is filled with racists, and there aren't enough not racist white people and people of color in the GOP to overcome all of the racists who supported Trump. And then the GOP members like Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham, who were slamming Trump and insulting him during the campaign, just fell in line with his racist crap. And they've been complicit. They've been valuing power and money over... Well, my hair looks crazy. How did that happen? I've been like that the whole time. Does it look okay, you guys? Yeah, they've been willing to sell out their country for power. And as a consequence, we now have a Russian agent in the White House. And Mitch McConnell collaborated. All the Republicans collaborated. Kavanaugh is part of this collaboration. Paul Ryan is part of this collaboration. Our democracy is under attack by Trump and his Russian allies. Right now, other than elections, we have the courts, we have Mueller, and hopefully those two processes together will be enough to overturn this horrible decision. It wasn't even a decision, it was a manipulated result. The other thing, too, that needs to happen is white people need to stop messing this country up. Racist, dumbass white people need to stop voting for criminals and con men because they sell you a line of BS. And speaking of selling a line of BS, can I just support and recommend Cult of Dusty's most recent video on the pool boy situation with Jerry Falwell Jr., who is completely... I hate to call him a Pharisee because the Pharisees in Jewish tradition get a really bad rap because they would debate Jesus. And the gospel writers always had Jesus like winning the argument, which automatically makes me think that he didn't. Like, no, but he totally would have said this if he would have thought about it at the time. But in terms of that reputation of people who appear to love religion but really are doing it for themselves or out of arrogance or something else, that's Jerry Falwell Jr. He is definitely a guy who is less interested in Christian morals and more interested in imposing his theocratic worldview on the United States. So we've got that nexus in power. People who are Christians first and Americans second are not patriots. People whose first duty is to imposing what they perceive to be God's law on other people are not loyal, patriotic Americans. They're theocrats who vote. And there's a big difference there. So I'm sorry, I see the light kind of changes from time to time. I'm sorry about that. I'm trying to work on that, but I think that's just the process of natural light going on there. Yes. So what do we do with this information? Again, I think it's the problem is information comes out and then it takes a long time to process these things. And so if we want to do it right, the process should be that we get an investigation in the House, and we see coming up, we're having Michael Cohen testify before one of the House committees or subcommittees or some group of people, the 7th of February. That, I think, will be a good grounding for an impeachment filing, because Michael Cohen has pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit campaign finance laws to further the presidency of Donald Trump, his candidacy. He's admitted to that. He's confessed to it. There's so much overwhelming evidence. He confessed to it. And he said he did it at the order of Trump, at behest of Trump, and to the benefit of Trump. Michael Cohen might have made a bit of money, but Donald Trump was looking to get the presidency, right? And so, yeah, let's get Cohen in there. Let's get his testimony on the record, because we can proceed with impeachment on the basis of the crimes that Donald Trump for which Donald Trump has already been named. Too many words in legalese that I am not practiced in using in a sentence, but Donald Trump is already associated with a convicted felon in association with campaign finance violations. So yes, let's impeach him for that. That's an impeachable offense if he has broken the law. That is a high crime or misdemeanor. It's a felony. Michael Cohen has been convicted of felonies. So yeah, high crime. And the only problem is that it's going to take a while. We're looking at, I would imagine, through most of 2019. The Watergate hearings took ages, and they didn't have nearly the amount of evidence to sift through and to give proper airing to. So this is the other thing about impeachment. Unlike a trial in the court, unlike what Mueller does when he takes evidence to a grand jury and then he also submits evidence to a court and all of this stuff is filed, Mueller can operate without public approval or public understanding. His job isn't to be there to explain to the public what's right or wrong. His world are the judges and the justices or whatever he's talking to. He's got to convince the judge that the judge is, he's done the right thing. And then if it comes to it, a jury has to be convinced, 12 people, right? But Robert Mueller doesn't have to worry whether or not people like him or think his stuff is, legit in public opinion. It doesn't affect his cases. Now, the thing about an impeachment trial is that it is a political process. There is no standard of reasonable doubt or presumption of innocence. I don't think any of those, they might in theory apply, but it's not as if we have lots of codes about how a defendant is meant to be treated and blah, 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 blah. At least not that I'm aware of. In terms of doing that kind of work, the impeachment process. And so I know he's a criminal. I know he's a threat to our national security, to our domestic tranquility, to our international trade agreements, to our cooperations around the world, to our EU partners and other partners. We were not just the EU, but Australia and China and other places around the world. I'm convinced of that because I read. I read news and I keep up with it. So, of course, I know what evidence is right. Sorry, I don't know what this is. Interpretation of... I don't know where that popped up from, but anyway. Most people aren't. Most Americans don't get into the weeds on this. Most people don't know the insides and outs. And even I who follow this, Kevin and I should do correction in the next happy hour, but it wasn't Klisniak. It was a different Ukrainian that Paul Manafort gave the data to. I try to stay on top of this, and it's still very, very, very difficult because there's 3 different, I think, Russian operatives before you get to the one who was the honey trap lady. Honeypot, honey trap, is it both one or the other? Anyway. But in terms of people, just average people raising their kids or spending time with their grandkids or planning their holidays or trying to keep their business going, they don't. So part of the process of the congressional hearings and taking time to do these, airing all this stuff out in public, is to get people on board, is to explain this. Impeachment is a political process. It's not a judicial one, and therefore you have to lay out the evidence for impeachment to the public before you write up the charges to try the president, or to vote to impeach him so he can be tried in the Senate. And I don't know how we can get around impeachment anymore. There's just too much evidence. And initially, I know when Nancy Pelosi, who still deserves massive credit for her historic win, people seem to have already forgotten about her historic win, but we shouldn't. She is amazing. She's a great political campaigner, and she put together a winning national strategy. You know what that national strategy involved? Not talking about impeachment. You know why? Because even though me, people on the left, we are really into this and we care about it, again, talk to your second cousins. Talk to your friend's friend from work. Average people don't follow this stuff. So she had Democrats run on healthcare. In Wisconsin, they ran on public education and how Scott Walker devastated and destroyed our public education system, how he underfunded the roads, so the transportation statewide has been degraded because he spent that money on, giving tax breaks to Chinese companies or something, or incentives to build in Wisconsin to Chinese companies rather than building roads to get kids to school. And as a consequence, those were the bread and butter concerns of most people. Most people don't care if Trump is impeached or not. So you have to start with where most people are: independent voters, occasional voters, people who don't identify as Democrats or do so very weakly. You have to use the hearing process to create the narrative. And once the narrative is out there, then you can start making a case as to why this has to be done, why we have to impeach the president. And that's because he can't be allowed to get away with this. If nothing else, there's the reason to impeach Trump is because otherwise we will have, as our permanent American history, fact that Republicans impeached Bill Clinton over perjuring himself to cover up a sexual affair. But Democrats won't impeach a man who conspired with a foreign power to undermine our elections and then cover it up and use his position to try to benefit a hostile foreign power. How can we not impeach him? How can we live with ourselves as a country if we don't use the Congress to repudiate this kind of behavior? The Republicans won't do it. The Republicans are racist, bigoted, corporate sellouts who have no soul, who have no patriotism. Lindsey Graham, Mofo Graham, told Trump to declare a national emergency and use military, what's the word called? Eminent domain. Lindsey Graham, small c, you're supposed to be small government conservative, right? Keep government power in check. Don't let the executive overextend their authority. What does he say? He said, yeah, why don't you declare a national emergency and just start stealing other people's lands under the claim of military eminent domain? Yeah, that's not fascist or authoritarian or complete contradiction to our democratic values at all, is it, Lindsey? And you know why he said that? Because he doesn't want to have to take responsibility for Trump's shutdown. The Republicans, I mean, honestly, I think there could be trials as in terms of whether or not they're actually conspiring. I mean, how many of these guys have taken money? We know the NRA got a bunch of money from Russia and they spent it on Trump. Where else did they spread that money around? How many other Republicans have actually been taking money from Russian influencers right now and or might be having strings pulled behind the scenes that we don't know about? You could say I sound crazy, but the fact is I was saying this shit about Russia a year and a half ago, right? I was saying a long time ago that this was, a conspiracy by a foreign power in conjunction with Trump to bring down our democratic system in order for it to cause chaos and destruction. And that's precisely what is the case. And it's not just people on the left. The FBI itself was so worried about the behavior of Trump that they looked into whether or not he was an witting or a witting, like an unknowing or like collaborating, participating agent of Putin. So let me just read this here. I'll go ahead and I'll swap the screen. All right. So one of the things I did, technical things, is I had, my computer screen over here, and I had my bigger screen over here. And before I was like using them both. There's just mirrored. But now I've split them such that my OBS is over here. And I'm looking laggy. Am I laggy on the sound, you guys? I should just check this really quick on my properties. No, that's right. I need my advanced properties. Let me just check this. No, okay. So tell me if I'm laggy in the chat. I look a little laggy on my screen, but I also know I've adapted it, and last time it worked out just fine. So let me go this one here, and let's see what this has to say. Where should I read this? I will read it on my other screen. I'll read it on this screen here, but then I have to make my window bigger. All right. The theory that President Trump is or has been a Russian asset is a popular one among his detractors. That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying. Look, there's no. Sorry, I'm gonna swap this all around again. Oh, there I am. Wrong camera. All right. But for the first time, we're learning that is something the FBI suspected strongly enough to dig into it. The Washington Post has confirmed that the FBI launched a counterintelligence inquiry into whether Trump was working for Russia shortly after Trump fired FBI Director James B. Comey in May 2017. This was first reported by the New York Times. Practically speaking, this may not mean a whole lot. Special counsel Robert Mueller was appointed mere days later, meaning any evidence the FBI collected was likely limited. It was Mueller's decision to continue the line of inquiry, and we don't know whether he has. But practical concerns aside, it's a shocking story. The nation's leading law enforcement agency was looking into whether a sitting U.S. president was working for a hostile foreign nation. This decision was something the FBI reportedly struggled with for months, and it still has its detractors. All right. So much to unpack there. Let me swap over to big me, reaction, me big. And there we go. The other thing about the way that I've got this set up is that sometimes I lose where my mouse is because it's going across two screens now. So thanks for bearing with me. Right, yes, unpacking this a little bit. First was, Comey failed the United States, the American people, multiple times during the 2016 election. I have very little sympathy for Comey and I don't think his firing was right. I don't feel bad for him because I think he was fired. He should have been fired, but not for the reasons given. I think he should have been fired because he was unfair with the candidates in releasing one candidate's investigative situation, which turned out to be an error. That he brought up the stuff about reopening the emails when the fact was he didn't know whether or not there was even evidence behind it to warrant going forward. In other words, what I'm saying is Comey should have had the investigation opening back up, and then if any new emails were found, then come forward, as opposed to saying we're going to go look to see if there's more bad stuff, and then there's not more bad stuff. But of course, what people are just remembering is the investigation. They don't hear the bit about, oh shoot, no, there was actually, that's my bad. That's just duplicated emails. We didn't find anything new. We just found copies of the same old thing. That didn't get as much play as Trump, using Comey's announcements. If Comey was going to do that during the election, he should have told us that that Trump was under investigation for collaborating with Russia. We deserve to know that at the time. If he was going to spill beans on Hillary Clinton's stuff that his office was doing, he should have done it for Trump too. And it's not like we didn't know. He was saying out loud in public, Trump, Russia, if you're listening, if you find those 30,000 emails, our media will be very happy. Our press will be very happy. Trump is not subtle about this. He's acting so blatantly in the open. You couldn't believe how brazenly he's betraying our Constitution. He is being a traitor in public. And it seems so amazing that the president of the United States couldn't possibly be a traitor to the United States, and therefore we must discount the evidence of our own eyes. No, the guy is a tool. He's a tool of Putin. That's it. I mean, he's a traitor. He's a criminal. He should be impeached. 2 + 2 = 4. So anyway, yes, they had all these concerns, and they're flipping out. And I don't know, and I think it was the right decision. My hair's very flippy today. It was absolutely the right decision to investigate the president because, well, of course, we know now there were plenty of contacts between his campaign and the Russians. We know now that he was doing his best to, do stuff under the radar to hurt Hillary Clinton and help his chances. So, of course, they should have done the investigation. And when they opened it, when they finally hemmed and hawed and decided to, move forward, shortly thereafter, the Mueller investigation was appointed because of the firing of Comey. And one of the things that tripped this with the FBI were Trump's comments about he fired Comey because of the Russia investigation. That sent up signals inside the FBI that there might be a problem here. The president might be a tool, might be an agent of Putin, which is what I've said all along. Even like the kissing, it was the I know people have said it's playing off homophobia, and I don't, because I understand the political context. I can understand if that picture of, was it Brezhnev and someone else, the Russians used to like kiss when they greeted, and there was a famous painting that was done of like two communist leaders embracing as they met, and someone adapted that to Putin and Trump. Now maybe that image plays better with those of us who were raised sort of during the Cold War and were more familiar with it, but it is like since the inauguration he's been up Putin's ass, and we've all known it. This isn't a surprise, right? Anyway, getting back to the story, right, so Mueller's investigation was appointed shortly after the firing and the Lester Holt interview and every dumb thing that Trump did, trying to cover his butt, getting Rod Rosenstein to make up a fake excuse that he was firing, that Trump was firing Comey because of his handling of Hillary Clinton's emails, and then Trump can't even stay on his own message, so he went on and told the truth on national television. No, I did it to stop the investigation into me because I might otherwise get in trouble. This is why you can't let the president pardon himself or herself. Ever. Mueller takes up the investigation, the FBI kind of hands it off, but it means that all of the stuff that they had about his collaboration and the evidence that they'd collected in the meantime, Mueller had since the start. That's one thing we didn't know. I think my impression of the Mueller investigation was that there was some stuff out there, but it was kind of starting from fresh. And now, and also listening to people like on AM Joy, and I watched a lot of the MSNBC programming, people who are in the national security business, like Malcolm Vance, who's awesome. I really like Malcolm Vance. He speaks truth to power, no doubt. no sweetness either. He's just like, boom. And there's another guy whose name I can't remember. He's a white dude. It's got kind of like a Vanda Huda name, something like that's really complicated. Anyway, people who worked in the security business, who worked for intelligence or in other defense industries or ran certain divisions within the FBI, who have now retired and are speaking about not the stuff that was classified, but just their experiences with it going back, say that it's very likely that it's not only the information that we have publicly that linked up Trump and Russia to trip off, these alarms inside the FBI, but there's probably more classified information that the FBI had access to that we don't know about yet, but Robert Mueller does. Yes. So keep on keeping on. This is the frustrating thing about politics, is that sometimes it takes a long time to do things. And I would predict that the impeachment I would like to see impeachment go forward by the autumn, ideally. The presidential campaign is going to kick off. It's already kicking off, but it's really going to start in the summer. And I think the House should have enough time between now and then to hold the hearings necessary to establish a basis of criminality, a pattern of criminality, and evidence of the president's criminality, such that they could, there's already somebody who's introduced articles of impeachment in the House. Nancy Pelosi okayed one of her members to introduce those articles of impeachment. It's just a matter now of putting the evidence before the American people, putting the narrative along with that evidence so that people understand how much in Putin's pocket Trump is, how criminal his activities have been, and what a complete danger he is. There are two, and let me break that down. And then they can do through the impeachment, hopefully, by the summertime. And I do think, again, I've said this before, I'll say it again, the House needs to vote on articles of impeachment regardless of what the Senate does. I don't care whether or not Mitch McConnell can bring about a conviction in the Senate. That's not the point, right? We all know Bill Clinton was impeached. He was never convicted. We still know he was impeached. That counts in history. And the Democrats morally are obligated to impeach this president, if nothing else, just to have a line. If Clinton's going to get done for perjury, Trump has to be impeached for all of his criminal activities. All right, so then what was I going to say there? I had a side point. Now I've forgotten it. Nah, it's gone. It's gone. So, so yeah, we've got a long time to wait. We're going to have, this is what I was talking about. I think the pause, the wait, the presidential campaigning is going to be starting. I should take notes. I should make a pen, and when I get a little side thought, I should not jot it down so that when I finish up my prior thought, I don't forget it before I move on to the next one. Oh my goodness gracious. So guys, in the chat before, this is kind of it. I mean, I think we now need to, wait. It's coming back to me. Something to do with a 2-stage process. No, it's gone. It's gone. It was a good point. Whatever it was, I was going to make it and I sound super clever. But now I forgot. So everyone, yes, just a moment of quiet for the brilliant thought of mine that didn't make it out into the world. Coffee's, cheers. Oh, my. All right, so anyone, if you guys have stuff in the chat, I will go ahead and take a look at it now. Erdogan, love or hates Trump depending on the temperature. Yeah, that's of course someone. Yeah, just as Anna was saying, this is the little club of strongman. Definitely, we're seeing what the founders actually feared. If we look back at what were the issues of the day facing the young republic that had been established after the conclusion of the Revolutionary War. There were basically two sides debating each other. Jefferson's and his people wanted to ally with the French. The French Revolution was going on. They wanted to see more monarchy being overturned and go in that direction. There was also a desire too to reestablish links and trade links and other stuff with the British after the war, doing that kind of reconciliation. And there was a concern about America. You have to remember, at the time, America was a very small country. It wasn't even a country. It was just this little offshoot in the middle of nowhere, pretty unimportant. However, colonial powers like the British and the French would like to play in other countries' politics in order to bring them on side. And one of the fears of the Founding Fathers was that our president, or members of Congress, but especially our president, who was in charge of foreign policy, could become an agent of a foreign power. And that's where the Emoluments Clause comes in, that there can't be any financial benefit, and there are other checks and balances. I mean, that's the one I'm most familiar with, that is an explicit attempt to restrain foreign influence on the president, the Emoluments Clause, which we know Trump is violating left and right, against the intention of our founders. And the purpose of that was to, again, keep the president independent and not become a satellite state of either Britain or France. And then after, it's kind of hard for maybe as Americans for us to think of ourselves as like, the Virgin Islands or the Puerto Rico of the world at the time, because when we've grown up, we've been the powerhouse. But at the time, we were literally like just nothing as a country and very susceptible to that sort of manipulation. The fact that now we are a world power and Trump is subject to that kind of manipulation shows how weak he is. He's a pathetically weak, stupid, egotistical, principleless, unprincipled man. Yeah. Now, how the hell did I get on this tangent? I think it had to do with the working of democracies. This is it. All right, I remembered the point. After 5 minutes, I came back, which is, it is not only Putin's intention to attack our democracy directly with these interferences through Facebook, through social media, through funneling money through the National Russia Association, using their influence to try to manipulate foreign policy in the United States for their own benefit. And that's a direct attack. But then there's also the sort of RT attack, which, and people like Trump help this. People like Lindsey Graham, Republicans, are actually helping this. And that is when we ourselves as Americans, democracy does require at least two things. Many things, but I want to point out two in particular that I think are important to this conversation. It requires that we trust our institutions, and it requires that we trust each other. These things, these elements of social trust, of public confidence, are necessary for democracy to function. Because if you don't think you can go to an institution and receive fair treatment, then you opt out, you check out. And this is, in a lot of ways, I understand, like, this is my white privilege, because many people already are at this point. They've opted out of institutional engagement because the justice system is racist and the courts are racist, and too many police out there are policing in racist ways. They're already disengaged. So for those of us who are still somewhat engaged, or people who feel like it's their duty to vote at least, every couple of years, pretty low tax in time and effort, for the benefits of it. If you don't trust the institutions and you don't think that the policies they pass are legitimate, then you don't have democracy. I am already at that point. I don't think the Wisconsin legislature has any democratic legitimacy. If I was in Wisconsin, I would be out there, maybe I wouldn't because I'd need a job sometimes, so on the weekends at least, basically saying that it's a puppet government, that it's an autocracy, that the Republicans are not legitimately elected, that every law they pass is actually null and void on its face because they don't have the democratic legitimacy to pass those laws. That's where I am with Wisconsin. Wisconsin doesn't have a legitimate government in terms of its representation. The only legitimate representation people in Wisconsin have are the statewide offices, where there was no gerrymandering effect. All right, Wisconsin is no longer democracy in my eyes. It's a failed state. It's a failed, local state. It's a banana republic. Okay, so now I'm out. Nothing that legislature passes will I acknowledge. And this is how people get out of democracy. If you can't accept that the decisions that are made are legitimate, that's already an end. That's a killer blow to democratic legitimacy. If you can't have faith in the institutions, and you can't have trust that other Americans, that your fellow Americans are also willing to play by the same set of rules. So why should I? And this is what Putin does, and this is what the Republicans do. So Putin does it on an international level by using his money and influence to destabilize our elections. And then the Republicans help him by promoting racism and racists and destroying democratic legitimacy through gerrymandering. And then they try to seal up all and legitimize all of their power grabs by stacking the courts. So it's just illegitimacy on top of illegitimacy that the Republicans have been doing in order to preserve the power of evangelical, old, rich, white men. It's old, rich, white, racist men that are destroying our country and destroying our democratic, it was old, white, rich, racist white men that set this government up. Even if you were against slavery, you were letting it go on, you're still allowing that racism. I don't think any of the founding fathers were racially, awake. All right? So the kinds of guys who set up the system, now those same guys are going to destroy it in order to keep everybody except them out of it. And that's our challenge of democracy. It's not, in the 20th century, the threat to democracy was the Soviet aggression. The threat to democracy in the 21st century are homegrown racist autocrats who are more interested in establishing one party rule by white old Christian Republican men over one person, one vote, because they don't want to let go of power. Those guys, Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, those guys are the biggest threats to our domestic tranquility. Not anyone on the left, not Antifa. Right? Those guys, Proud Boys, all the racist bigots who are trying to divide Americans and terrorize people into not asking for their rights and not standing up for themselves. Those guys are the real threats to our democracy. All right. So, okay, rant. That's what I've been looking to get out of my head as I've been watching all of this and taking all of this in, going, I can't wait for Sunday. I can't wait for Sunday where I make my case for why we need to impeach this president, why he's such an asshole, and why he's so dangerous. And the last thing I'm going to say on this, and then we're going to take a break. I'm going to get a fresh coffee. Basically, we take breaks when I run out of coffee. My coffee's cold. Either of those two things happen, we take a break. But, this might be a mantra for me going forward. If you voted for Trump in 2016, you were duped. If you vote for Trump in 2020, you're a traitor. I just can't see anyone who would vote for Trump knowing everything they know about him now, not just the racism, okay, which is disqualifying, not just the rampant misogyny and disrespect for women, which is disqualifying, not the criminal conspiracy to cover up his affairs before an election in order to lie to the American people and commit a felony in the commission of that crime, which, is already an impeachable offense. And so if after all of this, and he's an unwitting or witting agent of Putin, and you still vote for him, and you still support him, you're a traitor. Like, how else can you look at it? You prefer King Trump over the rule of law. Get out. Just move to Russia if that's what you want. Because they've got that kind of government where there aren't real elections, where there's only one party that ever really puts up candidates, and where the other people's voices aren't heard, and one group gets to put all of their values on the rest of society, whether or not that's, and without giving people in that society the representation needed to provide counter arguments and be there to provide alternatives. So, if that's what you're looking for, you can move to Russia, all you Trump supporters, because they already have the kind of government you want. That's all I got to say about that. All right, guys, should we take a little break here? Been going 49 minutes. I need to warm up my coffee, and then we can swap over to another not fun conversation, but another one that I think is really super important to have, and that is to keep following the story about the Catholic Church's rape culture and how we're seeing more and more the machinations, the inner workings, and how long and how deep this conspiracy goes. So I'm gonna swap you back over to the pre-show setup. Let's call it 5 minutes, because I try to do less before, and then I always end up taking more. So if we know it's gonna be a 5-minute break, then I can just put that in the timestamps. And it's, according to my clock, it's 12:49. So let's get back here at 12:54 with a fresh pot of coffee, or a fresh cup of coffee, however much you want to drink, or a snack, or some soup, or take a little break, or go walk outside, whatever you need to do. We'll come back here in 5 minutes and continue on with the show. See you soon, guys. back. Hello, everyone. How are you? I like coffee. I like coffee. I like coffee so much. I was actually singing that to myself as I was making my coffee. I don't know if I heard that subconsciously somewhere, but I just made up that little song as I was waiting for my coffee to brew. So hey guys, hello, we're back. How are you doing? Also, before we move on to the depressing subject, and yes, I'm alright, cool. I'm not, I haven't muted myself. That's good. Always a good thing not to do when you're doing a live show. I wanted to do show and tell. Where's the camera? Here's the camera. I wanted to do show and tell. I mentioned this on some of my hangouts, but I wanted to give proper props to my patron. Hold on, I gotta check my flares here. My little bits on the side. Leto, you guys might know from my hangouts and doing stuff, just in the chats or whatever. A couple months ago, I did her a favor by helping transfer some stuff to a mutual friend, and as a consequence, she sent me some of her artwork. And I noticed it because I keep it out in my living room, but I wanted to give her proper praise for this. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. Oh, there we go. I'll put this. There we go. Oh, front. Yeah, I guess it's a little close. Yeah, I guess I'll bring it back here. There we go. She made this and she sent it to me and I absolutely love it. I don't know if there's a right way up or down or whatever, but as you can see, look at this. Like, check. And this color back here, like, am I predictable or what? No, anyway, I adore this. I love it. The only complaint I have about it so far is that I haven't found a spot worthy of it. I think I would like ideally to have it someplace on its own and really be a feature, but my layout of my apartment isn't ideal for that. But Leto, just props to you and thank you very much. It's absolutely gorgeous. Who's drinking fizzy cola? Right. So let's get going with the next part, which I wanted to talk a bit about the ongoing scandal. You guys might remember, well, I mean, it's been ongoing scandal. It's been decades now, but it keeps leaking out. There's more information, especially with, I think, Me Too. There was another sort of interest, issues of nuns who've been sexually abused by priests coming forward in India, I think it was, as a consequence of Me Too. But let's go ahead and switch over. We'll do Me Big. Right. So we've already done Trump is a traitor. Yeah. These stories came up over the weekend, and I'm sorry, in the last week or 10 days since we last had a Sunday hangout or whatever. I guess I can look at the dates. When did this come out? Oh, this is not the one I wanted. This is October 15. This is a different one. Sorry, I'm having such a hard time keeping track of all of the information being released about abusive Catholic priests that I got the dates on that one wrong. So I know this one is from January of this year. The Opus Dei one. We'll talk about that. There's another one too, though, that was, I wanted to say was another, I thought it was a Washington, D.C. Diocese, but it might have been a different one that also released information in the last week. And those sexual assaults, I think they dated back to the earliest reports were in 1910. But I'll have to track that down for you guys. Apologies that I pulled up the wrong article in my research. I thought I had the right title. But there was also more information about Opus Dei. I'll just read here from the Washington Post. This is an article by Julie Zeltzerman and Michelle. My glasses are filthy. My goodness gracious. Hold on. I gotta clean these off. The problem with glasses when you have bright lights on you, as I do right here, is that you don't really see the dust and dirt on them until all the light is reflecting on the spots and stuff. You ever notice that? Like, I had one day when I looked out my window, it was a gorgeous day, blue sky. It was, sort of the spring shaking off its winter coat and becoming, putting on its summer dress. So it was this lovely, lovely, beautiful day. The sun was just beaming down and the sky was so deeply blue, and I looked out the window and then I looked through the window, and then I noticed that there was dirt and smudge from the winter's, exhaust and snowflakes and rain on my window, and then all I could see was how filthy my window was. I couldn't see the beautiful day. There we go. That's a little story to keep you occupied while I clean my glasses. When a woman who says she was groped by the priest she turned to for counseling, betrayal of trust and responsibility, it's just continuous. She reached a $977,000 settlement with the Catholic community Opus Dei in 2005. She was promised that the priest she claimed harassed her, the Reverend C. John McCloskey, a star in the Catholic world who converted prominent politicians to the faith, would be prevented from doing it to anyone else. On Wednesday night, 2 days after Opus Dei publicly acknowledged the huge settlement for the first time, the Archdiocese of Chicago said that, at least on paper, McCloskey was, in fact, allowed to minister with no restrictions for years afterward. The Archdiocese disputed some of the account provided by Opus Dei this week about how the conservative Catholic community handled McCloskey, and provided a 2005 letter from Opus Dei that shows the leader vouched for McCloskey even though he knew about the settlement. What emerges from conflicting accounts is a picture of Catholic leadership in both the Archdiocese and Opus Dei who told the woman they would restrict McCloskey's actions, and then they left a paper trail describing him as having an unblemished record. So this is part of the Catholic Church's rape culture. Is you you do as much as as little as you can get away with to cover it up, and then you just put a predator back out there. And you don't take harassment seriously. They don't take harassment seriously. They don't take abuse seriously. They don't take that violation of trust seriously. Because it's just women. And it's just kids. And bros before hoes, man. Am I right? Padres. Is that what's going down at the Vatican? Bros before hoes? And little kids? The Catholic Church is a rape culture. It's absolutely a rape culture. They don't care about sexual assault of children. They don't care about the sexual abuse or harassment or the violation of trust of women or men in their parishes. They just don't. And they can say they do. The Pope can use all the pretty words. I don't care anymore. I want to see actions. And unless they are opening up their records and handing priests over for investigation and charging, and or publicly naming them and saying exactly what they've been accused of and how the Catholic Church covered it up, I'm not interested. Absolutely not interested. You have to smash the patriarchy. This is an example of a specific instance of patriarchy. Now, initially in my slides, I should say, when I did this, I wrote misogynistic, which the Catholic Church is misogynistic in the Kate Mann sense. That not in the Kate Mann sense, but when Kate Mann has this definition of misogyny that is really more precise than just hatred of women, because hatred of women is not it's too broad, it's too vague. It's a particular kind of woman that is the target of misogyny, and those are women who try to rise above the prescribed norms for women's femininity in a very patriarchal system. So women who want power, who want to exercise power, who want to have an opportunity to make the decisions for men the way women have had their decisions made for them all of human history. That's who the church, not the church, that's who misogynists attack. So Carl Benjamin, definitely a misogynist. If there's a woman who agrees with him in terms of the superiorness of his culture and the roles of women and all that sort of stuff, and agree with him in that sort of patriarchal way, of course, you're not going to criticize those women because they're helping you sell your lie. They're collaborators in your attempts to perpetuate patriarchal power structures. It's women who threaten that are the objects of hate, and also men who want women to have equal power like that. They too get sort of that backlash, but it's it's a slightly different. They're the manginas and the cucks and whatever else. How did I get on this? Anyway, yes, the patriarchy of the Catholic Church. It's an all male bubble. It's a dude bro world, and because they don't have the physical, like in their spaces, they don't have representation from women. In their spaces, they don't have representation for child advocates. The only people who occupy positions of power in the Catholic Church are men. And they're men who can't get married or are meant not to get married. They're men who are also not meant to have sex. So how are they supposed to deal if they have no framework for even dealing with human interactions, let alone the crime of rape? How can we think they would ever have sympathy for the victims? You might think, oh, just as a normal human being, you should have sympathy for the victims. But the problem with the rape culture, as I pointed out in my videos, is that people who would, in other situations, make other choices will, because of their loyalty to the institution, will, because they're being ordered to by a superior, engage and participate in the conspiracy, engage with the conspiracy of silence or cover-up or whatever else. And they'll participate in it in order to protect the institution. And as soon as they do that, they then become part of the culture that keeps that going. Because once you are brought into a criminal conspiracy, and you know it and you don't report it, you are now part of it. And because of that, you are open to being exposed. And or if the institution is exposed, you will directly or indirectly be exposed. And therefore, by bringing in young priests who have who probably find this stuff appalling, they'll still get caught up in the culture of silence and cover up and moving people around, and then they become participants in that rape culture. And once they're invested, they will make sure other people who come after them, anyone they trust with these secrets, is also part of it, is also part of the conspiracy. That's why you have to destroy the Catholic Church. I mean, I don't see how you can't solve the problem of the Catholic Church's rape culture from within the Catholic Church. You can't expect these men who don't care about rape and child sexual abuse enough to act on it in the last thousands of years, but at least we know about, 1910? So over 100 years documented that we know this stuff has been going on. How can you trust them to change it? You can't. So that's really, really frustrating. There was that was it. I wish I would have found the other one. I tweeted it out. I need to find some way of like archiving my tweets. And I can just go through my Twitter feed. And go through all the stuff in the world that's pissed me off. Because that's usually what is on my Twitter feed. Yeah, so more on the Catholic Church's rape culture. That's still coming out. It'll probably still come out for decades. Not enough criminal investigations. Not enough settlements. If the Catholic Church were sued into oblivion, were sued into complete annihilation and extinction event, lawsuits globally, there probably isn't enough money in the Catholic Church to compensate all their victims. It would only be a drop in the bucket for all the suffering they caused. And yeah, do they do a lot of good? They do some good. Are they the only ones who can do that good? No. Is it worth them doing the good considering all of the harm that comes along with it? I don't think so. I think we'd be better off completely, like I said, force the Vatican to sell off all of its artwork, all of its assets, turn it over to the victims, turn all that money over in form of settlement, and disband it. It's a rape culture. Its work can be done by other people. So, fuck them. I guess that's where I am with the Catholic Church. Fuck them. Don't care. Yeah, so uncontroversial point of view for me, considering I'm an atheist. But the point of it is, I don't hate all religious institutions. I think a lot of people are just sort of like spiritual but not religious, and they're grown up in a faith, and they don't. There are people who are, of course, ideologues and fundamentalists, and those people are on the right. ISIS is on the political right. Any fundamentalism is on the right. Why? Because it wants to take us back. It doesn't even want us to stop where we are now and just hold still. It wants to drag us back into some golden age past where men got to thump on women and have slaves, and somehow that was more morally pure. So all of these right-wing people, bleh. There was one thing on my Twitter I did want to look at. So let's go to my Twitter, because it's the only place where this exists. I was gonna look at this dumbass guy. Alright, so let's go, reaction, me, tiny, you, the screen big. Here we go. Right. You know how the right-wing guys always have these, oh, they'll laugh, and look at this woman who's upset, and look at this guy who, or look at this woman, it's always women, look at this woman who's saying this, and look at this woman who's saying that. Very rarely do you actually see them complaining about things that men say. You know, it's more about, especially on the mocking stuff, whether it's Big Red or Trigglypuff or whatever it is, it's always about character, you know, just demeaning women, especially who have opinions. I guess, you know, for people who are idiots and think that ad hom is a way to legitimately dismiss somebody's point, it works. And we know that, for instance, you know, Carl Benjamin attracts a lot of idiots, and he himself is completely mentally deficient in terms of his research, reading anything, actually understanding what the topic is he's speaking about. He doesn't even know that patriarchy involves some sort of power exercise, you know, in ruling. So I'm going down here. Where did I get the... Sorry, I had some stuff coming up. Trying to scroll down and look at the same time. I think I might have passed it already. Hold on, let me go into my... I'll go into my mentions, because oh yeah, so I had the Lego Batman movie, but I called it logo because dumb. Where is that thing? So I was having, someone was asking me a question. I have to find it. Find the original tweet. There we go. Okay. There we go. Yes, finally found it in an indirect method. Sorry, guys. Right. I have to pop in my headphones now. Oh, can I just say so? Sir Toby, I see your comment, and it's on topic for the last one, so I'll put that on there. Sir Toby, this was actually an argument put forward as a defense of the Catholic Church's negligence in the late aughts. Quote, if we investigated all the cases, we'd be litigating forever and go bankrupt. Yeah, good. Exactly. Fuck you guys. How many years of suffering did that produce? So yeah, I mean, screw those guys. Who cares if they go under? Corrupt organizations should go under. That's the whole point. So yeah, thanks for that comment. So this is just me doing kind of what the shitlords do, which is finding some idiot to laugh at and going, hey, this is representative of all men. Shame upon you all. All right, so that's it's kind of hard for me to put the whole thing on there. I do have the sound down now, so hopefully you guys can hear this. It's 2 minutes, so let's have a watch and see what this incredibly insightful member of the Citizens Brigade here has to say.
I do apologise for the fact that this place is run by bloody immigrants.
Oh, he's complaining that the place is run by immigrants because apparently he doesn't want to be served. Yeah. You know, if you don't like the people who are serving you, fuck off. Go. Bye-bye. You try to find any restaurant that, you know, doesn't have somebody, and especially in a big city, has somebody who's an immigrant. If you have a problem with that, then fuck off to your white supremacy diner and just hang out there. Right.
Ooh, so rude.
Oh my god, how old is this guy? What an idiot. I'm getting the feeling, you know, I think Sargon would act like this in public. This is kind of the impression I'm getting here. This guy, I know what I can do. Maybe I can bring the side. There we go. Look at me, technology on the fly.
Go fuck yourself, you completely, simply mangina feminist.
Oh my god, what an idiot! This guy is a moron. Wow, nice. He's been watching too much Sargon, I think. Wow, yes. When you're reduced to calling people manginas and feminists, and you know you're making super, super great arguments. What a muppet. What a muppet this guy is. It's great.
Yeah, get it, bruv.
I'm getting it, bruv. Don't worry. Don't get too close, mate.
Good point. The guy's kind of a freak, so I wouldn't want to get too close to him either.
Don't get too close. Don't get too close, bro.
Say it again.
You gonna kiss him? What's he gonna, like, assault him with his lips?
You feminist, weak, hairy face, mangina.
This guy is a tool. I know that someone was saying, oh, people are laughing at him. Yeah, he's an idiot. This guy is a total idiot. Is he drunk? I don't know. He's publicly embarrassing himself for my amusement. So yeah, there you go. Here's your big, this is a model of what your gammon is. This is the kind of people who, are running the country. Older idiots who are bigoted, who think that anybody cares about their opinion, and go out in public here and make themselves look like fools. I mean, he can't make an argument. He's throwing insults. And this is it. If all you have is insults, it means you've lost. If your only point is to call somebody a name, you have no point to make. You are a waste of time. No one should listen to your idiotic opinions unless you can back them up with some sort of evidence. But just insults, you don't win. And I noticed this, Kevin sent me a message saying that Sargon had actually had mentioned him in his video about, I think it was about the N-word, about Nazis, about using the word Nazis. So I watched part of it just to see the bit with Kevin in it, because I'm a friend. I'll do a solid for my mate like that. And as I was watching it, I realized, because I don't watch a lot of Sargon's content, but this is what Carl does. He goes in his little safe space, like this, right? And instead of engaging with stuff, he creates all these little straw men, and he projects his what other people are thinking so that he can knock it down. He doesn't engage with the facts. He just makes things up. And he feels very safe because he can just sit in his little safe space and yell at the world, and especially women. Have you noticed Carl really likes to yell at women? Carl really likes to intimidate and belittle women. This says a lot about him, right? And that tactic is pretty much what I'm getting from this guy, which is, I'm superior, although I have no intellectual basis for claiming that. I have no moral basis for claiming that. And I'm not in any way making an argument that demonstrates the superiority of my argument. I have this guy has an overdeveloped sense of his own worth and people's idea of how much people respect his opinion, and that by just acting like an idiot, somehow he is actually making a point when he's just acting like an older, bespectacled, drunk version of Carl.
I'm a feminist. You weak. Shut your balls off and let women run the world.
Carry on, man. Keep going.
Yes. See, he's so threatened. The idea of women exercising power is so threatening to him that he has to equate it to having your balls cut off because he's not man enough to treat women as equals. If this is just what it comes across, right? Either he's dominating women, or women are dominating men, and women who are dominated by and the men who let women run things are inherently weak. This is the my magic penis argument. Why? Because the man says so. I have a penis. This gives me power. No, it doesn't. You have to make an argument, you idiot. And if you can't do that, no one should respect you. So I'm just going to continue because this guy is hilarious. He's a real moron.
Come on, go again.
You men.
Dance, monkey, dance!
You're testicles away and you're letting women run the world. Shame upon you all. Shame upon all you hairy faces.
Yeah. Bye. Just retire. Like, this guy's got 3 or 4 vote cycles left to have any kind of influence. He's a dinosaur. He's a waste of time. I'm glad he's getting laughed at by younger men who see him for the ridiculous fool. The old, scared, terrified fool. A man who's so terrified of women, he can't even think about letting them exercise power because he's so threatened by that. It's pathetic.
Mangina feminist soy boys. Now what in the world's fucked?
He's running out.
What a feminist. An immigrant.
Yeah, the guy's like, he's running out of words to use. Yeah, he only watches, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he is like a sort of Carl Benjamin watcher, and he's got soy boy and mangina, cock and feminist, and that's all he has. He has no actual arguments, just insults. What a wanker. What a wanker.
That's why my country is fucked. England is fucked by feminists. Immigrants.
I think it's people like you, mate.
Have a lovely evening, all of you.
Yeah, exactly. Did you hear what the young person said there? The young guy, he's like, I think it's fucked because of people like you old drunk, idiotic, gammon, sexist, bigoted piece of crap. What are you offering? Look at this. Look at this fine specimen of. He's the alternative. He's the alternative to egalitarianism and the idea that you should judge people on their, the content of their character and the work they do and the efforts they make, not their immigration status. Wow, yeah. If that is the superior race, white people were fucked. We're fucked. If this guy right here is holding himself up as the alternative to the nightmare scenario of talented men and women working together in an egalitarian society to solve problems, as opposed to random distribution of power based on reproductive organs. Yeah. If he's your savior, you're fucked.
God bless you all.
He is an idiot. It's really great. I haven't actually watched this before. You're seeing my legit reaction. I've not watched it before. I've saved it up for the show. I'm so glad I did. Who is this Muppet? Who is Mr. Gammon Pants here?
The world is built by white men.
Oh God.
Sorry.
No, it wasn't. The world was built on labor of black men and women and brown people. That's who did the work. That's who did the building. You know who stole the fruits of that labor? Do you know who stole the profits of that labor? White men. Yeah. White men didn't build shit. They stole shit from other people. And you can't claim credit for your big mansion, and doing it all yourself and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps when you stole everything you got from somebody else. And this, again, he's trying to get a sense of his own efficacy, his own agency, by citing the works of other people who themselves were thieves and inhumane slave owners. If that's where you get your pride from, man, you're an asshole. You're an idiot. Seriously. I don't take pride in slavery. I don't take pride in the kinds of ways that we that white people impose suffering on others in order to extract resources and wealth from their countries, and then ran away, took all that wealth into Europe and go, oh, look, we're the superior race. Yeah, because you fucking stole everything. It's easy if you steal other people's shit to then go, why didn't you lift yourself up by your own bootstraps? Because you stole my laces, motherfucker. This guy, seriously, the sooner this generation passes on, better we're all going to be.
Like it, do you? You don't like the fact that the entire civilization was created by white men.
No, y'all stole shit. Like, even the ideas of the Europeans that developed into empiricism and all of that stuff, right? The influence of the Greek thought that came from Aristotle, especially, but Plato and the ideal form, Plato was first popular in Aristotle, then became more popular as the Middle Ages went on. But that information, those texts were preserved by the Arabs, not by white people. Because you know what? White people had a dark age. We basically went back to caveman times while the rest of the world moved on in that period. And it was the Arabic translators of Greek texts that preserved the ancient knowledge that got retranslated back into Greek as Western Europe caught up and came out of the Dark Ages. So again, if you have to get your sense of pride by misrepresenting what other people did in the past and taking credit for it, you're a piece of shit. Seriously. Like, if you get your sense of pride based on your skin color because other people's did shit and you didn't do shit, who should listen to you? Who the fuck are you? You're no one. You did nothing. Shut the fuck up, old man. Shut up and sit down, you racist old fuck. Sorry, I'm getting more sweary at the end of the show, but this guy is an asshole.
And it bothers you because you can't do what we do.
Can't do what we do. Oh, was that occupy other countries and slaughter their people, enslave their populations, rape their women, and deny their children any opportunities because you're going to deny them education, any place of advancement, any status in their own world, and just going to ship them off? Yeah. If white people had to steal everything, then this guy is a great example of that. Because he's got nothing himself, but he wants to take all the credit. And he is like the worst part of white people in that way.
White men created the world.
Dumb motherfucker. Oh my god, this guy is so fucking dumb. You know, I'm going to find something. Because you're going to have to bear with me. Because this kind of arrogance and idiocy was once very well summed up, debunked. That's the word I'm looking for. By Sojourner Truth. And you guys know who Sojourner Truth is? In history, she's given one of the best speeches ever. She delivered it in 1851 at the Women's Convention in Akron, Ohio. She was there to listen to and then eventually speak to the issue of women's suffrage. Because remember, it took women 75 years to get the vote. 100-year anniversary this year of 100 years of women voting. All right, so now I just want to say that Sojourner Truth, 180 years ago, I can't do math in public. I don't like doing math in public. Whatever it was, in 1851, Sojourner Truth already saw this asshole coming, and she shot him down a century and a half before he was even a twinkle in somebody's eye. All right? So Sojourner says, and that little man in black there, he says women can't have as much rights as men because Christ wasn't a woman. Where did your Christ come from? Where did your Christ come from? From God and a woman. Man had nothing to do with him. If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And now they ask him to do it, and the men better let him. So, if you don't, please go read, if you have never heard it or seen it performed, Ain't I a Woman? It makes me weep, except for that part at the end. But white men didn't do shit. You can't do it all on your own. You reproduce by yourself. You raise yourself. You teach yourself how to eat. These white men teach themselves how to wipe their own ass. No, they were dependent on their moms, and all the way back, and all the knowledge that you guys know. You guys know this guy's a drunk, dumb, racist fuck.
For you, we made it possible for you people to create women to benefit from the world that we white men built.
What an asshole. Yeah, exactly. What is this, fam? Yeah, get the GTFO, you racist piece of shit. What an idiot. Wow. That guy was a moron. Like, thank you. I'm so glad I had a chance to watch that live with you guys interact. Because that guy's a waste of space. He's a waste of everybody's time. But, this is the thing. A lot of guys, a lot of women. A lot of white people think like that. And yeah, one of the things that has happened in the era of Trump, in all honesty, is that I felt an increasing moral obligation to speak my truth on racial justice, because I think before, as a white person, I felt like it wasn't my job. But now I realize exactly that is my job. That is my job, is to acknowledge when white people are moving things in the right direction, because credit is important too. But also to call out and disassociate myself from this kind of stuff and explain why this guy is full of shit. And I'm starting to embrace that role a bit more, and quite happily too, because I can see that, there's a lot of, let me just turn it on its head. Fox News wants to talk a lot about the responsibility of black people and the black community, about crime in the black community. Yeah, white people need to take responsibility for racists in the white community and call them out and disassociate from them and try to make it a better argument than the dumb racists make, and explain why they're holding us back, why it's anti-American. The founders were racist slaveholders, but the ideas they have are actually not limited to that group. And so it's our responsibility to democratize those principles and to realize true equality, because that is how we, as an American society, I think, will succeed. All right, so how long have we been going now? Oh, an hour and 30. All right, so what I'll do now is I will give you guys a little bit of time to write stuff in the chat. I know that sometimes you guys say, oh, I wrote something in the chat and you missed it, but when I'm doing it here, I'm not reading very closely because I feel a need to keep talking. And therefore, I usually do this sort of, okay, guys, it's time to put your questions down or your comments so that I can just look at the current chat rather than try to go back and scroll through it. And actually, speaking of which, I think, yeah, I can now put the browser on. Ah, there's you. There's you, guys. And let me transition this over. Sorry, I'm going to... nope, wrong one. This one? Yes, okay. Look at me go. All right. So let's get into the YouTube comments here for the live chat and see if you guys have anything you want to say. Otherwise, I'm going to get going because I'm going to meet a friend this afternoon for coffee, and I have some errands I want to run, and then a little bit of a relaxing evening before kicking off the next week. I'm trying to think. So we should be fine for next Sunday in terms of doing the recording. I'm going to be traveling for work like the week of the 21st-ish, and then I've got a conference at the end of the week in Mannheim, so I will, but I don't think there should be any problems with me keeping up the Sunday shows for the rest of January. So, all right, thank you. I can also see 255. He's got the question so that it's easier for me to identify. All right, that's not sweary. Doesn't want to be, yes, guy like that. How misogynists cope with the fact that a woman gave birth to them. Yeah, how do they cope? Yeah. Although I think, the problem with... one of the things you get with a misogynistic worldview is a biological reason to dismiss women as baby machines. If it's a case that women's biggest are defined by their biology, which definitely helps someone who's a misogynist or patriarchy, if you insist on that role, then they are performing that function. They are operating correctly. But you don't have to then treat them as a mind because you're treating them as a uterus, basically. If you're Stefan Molyneux, you make a YouTube channel purely about that one thing, yeah? White men set up systems that keep non-white men from having access to education and then complain non-white men are incapable of innovating. Exactly. It's that picture of how whites used the labor, the sweat, the suffering, the bodies, the lives of black people for centuries. And they used slave labor to build the White House, guys. Right? And so they enslave people to build up their national wealth, and then they turn around and pull up the ladder behind them. And then say, look, I did it. I can make it. I inherited these assets from my family. Yeah, your family came from slavery, so you have no assets, but that's not my fault. Fuck you. All right. When he goes off about women breeding with arseholes, you have to ask what he's saying about himself. Yep. Question, other day Andrew Torres suggested we waited until Trump's out of office and then criminally convict him. Thought about that. Wrong. Sorry, Andrew Torres. I mean, he might be thinking about it as a lawyer. I'm thinking about it as a political operative. And also, as an American, how can you not impeach the president for what he's done? Just vote on articles of impeachment. Just vote on them. I don't see why that should be controversial. Allow the representatives of the American people to decide if they think that this president has his known crimes have risen to the point of being impeachable. And it's going to be the case that when he's out of office, he will be liable anyway. So the purpose of impeachment is that it's like a political censure. It's a political act. And it's a political repudiation. You see what I mean? And maybe Andrew doesn't get that as a lawyer, like he doesn't have that take on it. He sees it as a process, like a legal process, like you use it to remove the president so that he can then go on to be convicted. But impeachment itself is a moral statement. And I think desperately that Congress needs to make that moral statement before the end of the Trump presidency. Because if we excuse this, if we excuse everything that Trump's going to go on to be convicted for, by not impeaching it while he is in office, what does that say about what we are willing to let our presidents do? So, remember when you had that debate with Carl in 2015? Do you think we'd still be talking about him almost 4 years later? I didn't really think about that far in the past. If anything, I kind of thought Carl would have more influence, but he's not a political animal. He's actually not that smart at operating. If you look at the trajectory of his peers, he could be doing a sort of Paul Joseph Watson, or like those guys are going up in, like, they try to anyway. Their aim is to become bigger and bigger and punch up, to punch at people above them in order to get the attention, right? Carl he likes to be a big fish in a small pond because he doesn't have any real substance. Why does he still want to come on Hangouts with Kevin Logan or mention Kevin Logan or me? Because he can't compete with a Michael Brooks or any of those guys. He can't aspire to be like them because he can't play in their arena. So he has to stick with straw manning. He has to stick in a place where people have smaller voices, so that he doesn't actually have a counter. The problem with Carl going after someone bigger and on the left, of trying to punch up at a Sam Cedar or a Michael Brooks or someone else and that stature, is that they have bigger audiences than him, and he's a weak he's a weak crybaby. He's a bully, and bullies thrive on punching down. And Carl's all he has is punching down. He spent his entire career hating on women. That's what he got known for. It's not for principles or ethics. It's hating on women. And he's been struggling since Gamergate, because what his audience wants is for him to hate on women, and the only thing he really does is hate on women. And so when he tries to become political outside of hating on women, he ends up failing all the time. So I don't know if I'm happy he hasn't gotten more popular, to be honest. He's such a failure. He can't take advantage of his own political opportunities to build his audience. It's amazing. All right. How do you begin to solve the problems post-Trump? Isn't it nearly exclusive focus on him counterproductive? I think that the way that we heal from Trump is we look at the ways in which the system has failed. How did Trump get through? So one of the things that has come up is that we now realize that there are no real laws that prevent the president from doing unethical things. We just had, in the past, we'd elected, at least in the recent past, I can't talk before, say, Jimmy Carter, but we elected men who had some sense of honor and respect for the office, that they wouldn't use it to try to personally enrich themselves. That, not to that extent, right? I'm sure that there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on, but Trump was there to do that. So I think part of the way that we fix the system is we look at all the ways that the failures of, for instance, not having laws that require candidates to disclose their 10 years worth of taxes. States are passing that now. In order to be on the ballot, you have to release your taxes. And I think going forward, we can't leave the Trump era without that reform. We need to make sure that our politicians in future are not, I can take these out now, our politicians in future are not financially tied to hostile foreign powers. So that's part of it. Another part of it is changing the emolument clause rules and clarifying them. There's also things that we can do about, Trump wants to declare this national emergency to engage in illegal, in my opinion, military seizures of property across the southern border. We need to have congressional oversight that a president can declare a national emergency, but if the funds are to be spent more than 30 or 60 or 90 days out from the emergency, congressional approval is also required. So there's a lot of ways that we can fix it. You know what it reminds me of? You guys seen the, maybe you don't remember, but if you've seen the Ken Burns documentary about baseball, and one of the early players back in the late 1800s, his nickname was King Kelly. I can't remember something Kelly. His last name was Kelly. And a lot of the rules that first were developed in baseball were developed because King Kelly kept trying to cheat. Right? And the classic one I remember is he was sat on the bench and there was a pop fly. And back in those days, you would just announce a player by calling it out, and then the two people would swap. And where he was sat, he was going to be in a good position to catch the pop fly. It was heading right at him. So he just said, Kelly playing third base or second base for Boston, and he caught the ball out of bounds. But because he'd made the announcement before he caught the ball, technically he was the player. So they had to make rules that you couldn't do that anymore. And I feel like Trump is a bit like that. He's shocking us with his disregard of appropriate behavior, and he's demonstrating the need to have formal laws because we can't trust presidents to do what's normal or the norms of the office anymore. And so we can do things like that. Let's see. And is it also valid to employ the same mechanisms of control against misogynist racial I don't know what U2 is. Sorry, U2. I don't know what you're talking about. What job can Carl pivot to when his e-bucks dry up? That's a good question. Gosh, maybe he could become a chat boy for like, I don't know. I mean, he can use the internet. Those are the only two things he does. So maybe he can start a little chat thing doing that. 'Cause who's going to want to hire him? Nobody. Go back on the dole like he was when he was still 34. I don't know anything about that, but do you think Hillary could have won if the FBI email stuff hadn't happened right before the election? So I watched, actually, I had colleagues who did an analysis of the four competing explanations of why Hillary lost. And they tried to operationalize things like the Russian interference, and they tried to operationalize the Comey email announcement. And what they said was that there's no evidence that shows that these things directly led to her losing the election. Now, the problem with that is it's pretty hard to identify a causal relationship in political science, especially one that's, mediated through an attitude. So I appreciate their efforts since they've done this initial preliminary analysis. More data has come out about the number of votes that Republicans, like estimates on how many people were not able to vote because of Republican gerrymandering. There's been more detail about the amount of money spent by Russians in certain ways. And so I initially said, look, I appreciated that they'd made the effort to test these things, but I don't think that they were properly capturing them as a metric at the time. It would be very, very difficult empirically to take survey data where people are reporting on their attitudes and their memories of what they thought in October and say, yes, I remember hearing about the email scandal and that was what changed my mind. That's just not generally how people come to a conclusion. People have an emotional reaction to a candidate, like they're leaning toward them or they're leaning away from them, and then as things come out, they sort of get nudged more or away or whatever. And it's if you don't have an identification, if you're weighing things up, it's hard to say, oh, it was the Comey email. So we won't know that for sure. What is certainly the case is that the Clinton staff and Clinton herself felt like in that last week they had momentum going forward. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but psychologically they felt in a good place. And then the Comey email thing came up, and then they were talking about that and put on their back foot. And then Trump talked about that as well. And so that forward-facing momentum that was coming off of the beginning part of October got turned around. And or at least her campaign felt like the momentum that they had initially built up was taken away because of that event. Can we translate that feeling of momentum loss into votes? No. But I do think that it did frame, for instance, for a Republican woman maybe who was thinking about voting for Clinton, it was one more piece of evidence, even though it turned out to be nothing, to stick to Trump. So I think there are like marginal effects. Who will enforce these laws with fairness and accountability? I don't know which laws you're talking about, you two, sorry. Do you think Trump actively tried to shock people with his ignorance, or it's just natural to him? I just think he's being natural. I think he's naturally a moron. He's gotten away with it for 70-some years. And this is just how he is. I don't think there's much of an act. The only thing that we know about Trump, sorry, I'm going to have to cough here for a second, is that whenever he says, believe me, he's lying. Whenever he said, some people are saying, that means those are voices in his head. And if he's just, this is going to happen, it means it's not going to happen. I mean, he's always like on the opposite side. He's just a big fucking fat liar face. And so I think that he's just operating, he just fails upwards for some reason. So I don't think he's trying to shock people. I think that's just as ignorant as he really is. Will the Democrats still want to limit presidential power once there's a guy or gal in power? Yeah, definitely. This isn't necessarily, I mean, the Emoluments Clause formalizing the Emoluments Clause restrictions in order to prevent a president from being influenced by a foreign government is in everybody's interest. It's not a Democrat-Republican thing. That's a constitutional integrity. It's a sort of democratic legitimacy question. And if you don't think your executive, your chief executive, is acting in your own national interest, if you think they're a puppet of another government, that doesn't benefit anyone. That's so definitely not. And when it comes to limits of presidential power on, for instance, declaring a national emergency to do military eminent domain on private land, yeah, I don't see why that would be a problem. I think that if you're going to be spending money that was authorized by the Congress, you need congressional approval. Like, that's just how the Constitution is set up. All appropriations bills start in the House for a reason, and that's because it's the people's money that's being spent. And so you can't redirect it as the executive without congressional approval. And so no, I don't see there's nothing that could be done. Sorry. There is no presidential restriction that we've now learned needs to be formalized because of Trump that would prevent a Democrat from doing their job in the future. Absolutely not. This is just a good governance issue. Just a good governance issue. U.S. needs to switch to proportional representation or a proportional element. Yeah, I mean, the problem is it's such a cumbersome process to do electoral reform. And we're seeing the Democrats now, they're already starting to do some like protecting voter rights and to reauthorize the Voting Rights Act and to act in ways to protect elections. But whatever it should have or whatever would be a nice thing to do, it would take literally revolution, I think, to change it at this point. And that's not going to happen. 50 years since Maine reformed its electoral college and Nebraska followed suit. Yeah, I mean, you can do it at the state level. There are state initiatives, but in terms of like changing the federal constitution, the constitutional process of the electoral college, that's kind of what I was thinking about. But yeah, there might be a better way to do it on the state level that more fairly distributes it. But then again, here's the problem. Let's say a state like Wisconsin says we're going to apportion our electoral college delegates based on the popular vote such that, if it's 51% to 49%, you get, I think it's 8 seats. So you get like 5 to 3, or you get 6 to 2 if it gets, or 7 to 1, so that you don't win. It's not winner take all. It's somehow apportioned to represent the vote share in the state. If you do that in a state like Wisconsin, then you just dropped in value to a candidate. This is because you have to think about the elections from the point of view of the candidates, not just from the point of reform. If I'm a presidential candidate and I can go to Michigan and I can get 8 votes there, or I can go to Wisconsin and no matter what I do, I could maybe I'll get 7 or I'll get 6 or whatever, or I'll get 5. But I'm not going to get all 8. Am I going to go to a place where it's winner take all, where I get more votes? Or do I spend time trying to win votes over in a state where it's proportionally doled out? So states that, if you took that approach, I think states would be undermining their value to the candidates because they're not winner take all in that environment. Now, if all states went to it at one time, that would be different. But if it's California is going to be winner take all, or Illinois is going to be winner take all, why would you go to a place where the same amount of effort will get you fewer electoral college votes guaranteed? So McConnell's blocking. McConnell's a traitor. McConnell's a failure. Mitch McConnell is not doing his job as leader of the Senate. He is not doing his job as a leader of a major house. And now he's not protecting his rights. He's not acting with independence. He's not trying to do anything to keep the legislative branch not a slave to the executive. He is evil. Mitch McConnell is one of the core reasons our democracy is degrading before our eyes. with his judicial packing and his obstructionism and his willingness to cover for this traitorous president. So Mitch McConnell is a traitor in the United States, in my opinion. How would you react if a Democratic president tried to use the same "I close the government so I get my way" tactics to get money for like single payer? It's so a lot of times shutdowns are about money. That's you know, they've had lots of shutdowns about money. The reason why this one is different is because Trump blew up the process, right? It's not just that he's asking for money for his wall. One, the president has an opportunity to put forward a budget. The Trump budget did not have the $5 billion in it for the wall. If he wanted that money, he could have put it in his own bill and appropriations, but they put 1-something billion and change as their budget. So he didn't ask for it in his first budget. And then during the continuing resolution, the president had agreed with the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans and the Democrats and everyone. There was an agreement for the continuing resolution to go forward. The Senate passed, and I think a voice vote, to keep the government open until February was the next negotiating point. And then in the middle of the process, Trump, because he got pressure from Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh, blew up the process. And in the middle said, no. Now, apropos of nothing, apropos of people who aren't elected putting pressure on me, I'm going to blow up the continuing resolution and demand money I didn't submit in my budget. And if we don't go forward, I'm going to shut down the government. So shutdowns happen sometimes because people disagree politically. That's a thing that happens. But is it the case that every time it's happened, it's like Trump? No. So, there were shutdowns under Obama. There was a shutdown under Clinton, and it was over budgetary reasons, but it wasn't for fake crises. And this is the difference. Trump has manufactured this crisis, and the Republicans are enabling him to do it by not voting on the bills that they themselves voted for only a few weeks ago. How many times do you have to be cheated before you begin to cheat back instead of trying to come up with your own uncheatable rules? I am still at the point where I want to use the democratic process to work through this. That's where I am. I'm going to hold out. I'm waiting patiently. I'm going to see what the courts do. I'm going to see what the next election holds. But, if things continue to degrade, at some point, I can't tell you at this point, you start calling for an overthrow of the government or holding new elections or whatever else. That's, I guess, you'd have to look at the situation. So I don't know if it's so much that you have to cheat back so much as you have to, because cheating back doesn't fix the problem. We saw how in North Carolina, for instance, Republicans were stealing votes from people and going and collecting their absentee ballots and filling them out and sending them in. And the Justice Department knew about this years ago, which was also in the Washington Post. Fucking Republicans. They cheat, they steal, they lie. I don't know how you can be, I even think that these people are patriots. They're not patriots. But anyway, you don't cheat back to fix the system. Cheating back, all that does is expand the illegitimacy. So the point of reform is to make people feel like they can put their faith in that they'll be treated fairly. That if there's an election this time around and your party doesn't win, you have a fair shot next time of getting your people elected so you can see the changes you want. So it's not about cheating back. It's about reforming the laws so that everyone has faith in them again. How would reauthorizing the Voting Act work? The Supreme Court ruled against it. So there's multiple parts of the Voting Rights Act, and one part of it was struck down because Congress hadn't reformed it to the Supreme Court told Congress this part of the law kind of sucks. And of course, Republicans didn't do anything about it. And the next time it came up, they struck it down because Congress hadn't acted. But there are other parts of the Voting Rights Act that have been used to sue for the civil rights protections across the country. And also, they need to make that reform in the law. The one that the Supreme Court, the reason why it was struck down, I don't know the details off the top of my head because I'm not a lawyer, but I do know what the thing you're talking about. One of the several numbered acts that was the most popular one got struck down. Congress just needs to change the law, and then it won't be unconstitutional anymore. So they can do that. I mean, that's kind of their job. So get on it. Is the rhetoric of traitor apt? Yes, these people are traitors. You said they're serving people their interests, which ostensibly align with the U.S. as a whole. No, they're not. This is it. They're not trying to help the U.S. as a whole. Donald Trump's interest in building something in Moscow and using our trade policies to give sanctions relief that was imposed because of criminality on the part of Russian oligarchs is not in our interests. He's manipulating it. And the treason to me goes far beyond acting in your self-interest. It is also the willingness, like Lindsey Graham, his willingness to say, look, I can't be bothered to work with the president and make him see reason with the Democrats. So instead, I'm going to encourage the president to do something unconstitutional in order to get him a shiny object. Oh yeah, declare a national emergency and then sign in the continuing resolution. I think this is how Lindsey Graham is thinking. So you get him to declare the national emergency, which is going to get overturned in the courts like his Muslim ban stuff garbage did. And at the same time he's declaring the national emergency, he signs the continuing resolution to open up the government. To Lindsey Graham's mind, that is a better solution than actually trying to get Trump to negotiate with the Democrats or work with him in a grown-up way. He's willing to have the president engage in unconstitutional actions and hope that the courts, now that they've been stacked with a bunch of Republican judges, don't back him instead of doing his job as a Senate. And that to me is a kind of dereliction of duty that rises to a charge of treason. Still disappointed Obama didn't call McConnell's bluff on the Supreme Court nomination. It's been 6 months. Clearly they don't want to advise. Part of the problem with there are rules about the Senate being in session and out of session and the kind of picks that the president can make when Congress is not in session. And Mitch McConnell would always keep the Senate in session so that Obama, even if they left town for 2 months, he'd keep them technically in session to stop Obama's recess appointments. So there's Mitch McConnell is like a fucker in deep, deep ways, in like deep, dark legislative Senate rules ways that he tries to destroy the functioning of a democracy. Yeah, tell us what I really... I think this is it. What do you do when you feel like your democracy is being attacked? Is there... and this is what I'm wrestling with now. I mean, I think that now what I'm seeing is that Trump's presidency is collapsing under the weight of its own corruption. But that in and of itself doesn't actually... The collapse won't resolve the paths of corruption that led to Trump. And yeah, democratic legitimacy is so precious. It's so precious. It's something that I didn't realize how much I took for granted. Even when, in 1994, when there was the Republican Revolution and we had welfare reform and I hated Newt Gingrich and I hated the GOP there, I never doubted that they had won the election and had, because in some ways, people on the left didn't turn out as much. It was an off-year election. They were all hyped up about, Clinton stuff. And yeah, Dem voters haven't been the most reliable at the polls. But I didn't feel like it was a systematic effort to stop democracy from happening. And now I do. And democratic legitimacy is so precious that the question for me is like, how far do I go in protecting it? And right now it's to speak out about it and to call it treason. Maybe not criminally treason, but in terms of the spirit of their oaths to the Constitution, our oath as citizens to protect it from enemies both foreign and domestic. If you are trying to undermine the rule of law and trying to corrupt an entire system and normalize that corruption so it benefits that few in the Trump circle, then yeah, I'm gonna call you on your shit. For the death penalty for traitors, no. I mean, we're not in a time of war. I think the kind of death penalty... Here, I just want people taken out of power. I want people named and shamed and removed from office. And I want to see their seats replaced with people who have true patriotic spirit, which is the one about, everybody getting involved and lowering barriers for this more inclusion. Basically, the sort of the drunk racist guy in the Mickey D's or whatever fast food restaurant is. I see people like him in power. And the problem isn't the power. The problem is getting people like him out and putting good people in. Like AOC. You can just, I'm not as far left as AOC, but I support her, like activities and her advocacy and her positions, because I think those should be debated. And so putting people like her in power is a good way to start fixing what's been going wrong. Oh yeah, death penalty for traitors. So I can see where in a situation of war where there's an existential threat to your country, and people who are meant to be loyal, or you think are citizens and you think have share your loyalties, and then it turns out that actually they've been working to undermine your security and stability, I can see why you would try them, but I'm just generally not pro death penalty ever. So certainly I would not want to see even traitors executed. You can sit and rot in jail for the rest of your life. Don't dare call McConnell a motherfucker. And great thing about Australia is we can call our politicians worse than that. How can you prevent traitors from reassuming power at the point of vulnerability down the line? Yeah, that comes down to the voting population. This is it. We get the government we deserve. And you have to put a little bit of an asterisk next to the Trump election, because he did have outside help. But the fact is, the people to blame for Trump's election are white people, are racist, dumbass white people. There are few people of color who voted for him, but generally, if you look at where his support came from, the problem was with the quality of our voters, and we can change that in two ways. You can, one is people can not vote. I don't know if that's a solution. A better solution is to engage people who share our values and who want a better America for everybody, not just white people. And if you actually believe that a rising tide should lift all boats, then yeah, that's great. But in terms of prevention, I think putting up candidates with those values, articulating those values, and you need to warn against the mistakes of the past. I think Trump, anybody associated with Trump now, is going to be stained with this Russian bullshit if they've been defending him and if they've been taking NRA money. And so what you do is you attack the legitimacy and the credibility of those people who of the corrupt, and expose them and name and shame them, and then elect people who are not like them. Who are you as far left as? I don't know who I am as far as. I tend to be, I'm usually slightly to the left of the candidates I end up supporting. And that's because unlike a lot of lefties, okay, maybe this isn't fair, but my impression of a lot of left people I see on Twitter is that they hang around people who are just like them. And so they are like, it's so obvious that Democrats should run on impeachment in the 2018 election. And what they don't do is I don't think they knock on doors, and they don't talk to average voters. Average voters aren't engaged in that way. They don't care so much about those kinds of issues. They are selfish. They are focused on because they're trying to get by. If you're trying to put food on the table for your kids, then, that is your main concern. It's kind of a luxury to have the time and energy and interest to be outraged over what Trump has been doing this week. A lot of people don't have that. And if you spend a lot of time on Twitter and lefty Twitter in your circles and you see everybody saying the same thing, you might think that other people who have real world, like non-political lives also think these things, and they just don't. So I'm always of the position that I'd rather have a slightly more moderate version of my preferred candidate get elected than the other parties. And because I know Americans are very widely in their political beliefs, if you run a candidate that is too far to the left of most Americans, I look at Dukakis. I go back, and you guys probably don't remember Michael Dukakis. I do. Michael Dukakis was barely a liberal, and Reagan made liberal a dirty word. It took 20 years for the word liberal to reintroduce itself, to be considered, not a slur in American politics. So those of you guys don't remember the 90s, you don't remember this. And so you have to, Republicans do this really well. What do Republicans really want? They want to end public services. They want all tax money to be redistributed to corporations and private rich individuals. And they want to make sure that money is spent on things that help them personally in their business, like infrastructure and the military, because there's a lot of money to be made in building roads and infrastructure and spending and building military equipment. They don't care about the average person. But what do they sell? Right? They have their... This is it about the GOP. You guys know this. They have their own agenda. But do they talk about that? No. What do they talk about when they run for office? Well, back before, it was about making abortion, completely illegal. For those slutty women who want to control their reproductive fertility, the timing and pace of their children. They would demonize Democrats on gun rights, even though Trump banned bump stocks. Did you hear the NRA freaking out about that? Oh no. Why is that? Russian tools. And so it was guns, God, and... Oh yeah, and then just how evil liberals are. The Republicans run on social issues in order to pass economic policies. It's a bait and switch. It's a bait and switch that they've been running for 50 years. And so if you are a lefty and you want Trump impeached, don't talk about impeaching Trump at the election. Don't campaign on impeaching Trump. You campaign on healthcare, and then you do it, and you campaign on, making things affordable for families and for protection, and you do all those things, and you impeach Trump. So, don't show your hand all the way. People don't care about the same things you care about, right? So you need to connect with voters who don't care about impeachment and give them the reasons, the other benefits for voting Dem in that way. How to get better voters? Education. Yeah, exactly. Why else are the GOP dismantling public education? Yeah, they don't want thinkers. They don't want critical thinkers. They want workers. I mean, this is George Carlin. You guys have watched the George Carlin thing about the American dream, right? And how they want people who are smart enough to do all the work they need done, but not smart enough to question their power structures. That's very much what it's sort of a wage slavery, education slavery. Keep people economically marginalized, so they're so busy just surviving, they don't question the structures that are exploiting them. Do we need to outlaw political lies? Yeah, see, this is how else do we deal with social media in the age of politics? I think that there's an absolute concern about the, free speech, and everyone wants to talk about the free speech, and no one wants to talk about the accountability that comes with it. You can't, of course, you can't make lies illegal. I think I think in the UK. There's maybe, I don't know if there's a truth in advertising. It starts to get really fuzzy in terms of regulating, especially political speech and lying like that. I think that especially with U.S. even libel laws and slander laws, can I think of a single legal case in the United States where one politician sued another politician for libel or slander? Maybe in the dusty recesses of my memory, I can think of one, but it was like a local state race or something, and then they ended up getting in a fist fight in a parking lot through a truck window. I don't know, but politicians basically have no recourse when people lie blatantly about them because they're considered public figures. So I don't, and then also true, you'd need to establish some sort of commission that determines what's truth and what's lies, and I can just see that not going well. High school, my teachers grew up in Vietnam and they treated it like the most significant event in human history. People are just stuck in the 20s, so the GOP thinks they are. That's also, one thing too is you notice that the GOP tends to be it's mono-generational. When you compare the incoming classes of senators and members of Congress in the Democratic side and the Republican side, you can see the old white dude bubble. And no offense to old white dudes. Y'all do your thing. But when that's all you have in your group, then that becomes a problem of representation. And their frameworks are all the same framework. Whereas you have someone younger, they have a different take. And you can hear what a younger person thinks, or a woman's perspective, or someone else's perspective. And this is why if you read Hannah Pitkin's The Concept of Representation, she talks about the way that representation actually works on multiple levels. There's symbolic representation, like the meaning of actually just even being there. Then there's substantive representation, when you are there as the voice, substantively articulating things in that political space that have not been articulated before because someone with that perspective was not there. And then descriptive representation, the way that does a body actually look like the population it represents. And I think there is, on its face, some lack of validity if your power structure is all from one ethnic background, one age group, or predominantly like a vast majority. And that looks nothing like the lives of the people that you're making laws for. I think that there's a democratic legitimacy gap if your descriptive representation is very far off of your population. However, descriptive representation, or just having people who look like your population in and of itself, is not enough to be pure or, adequate representation, because you could have people who are just appointed for optics, but the power structure doesn't change. They don't speak substantively on behalf of the people whose experiences they're representing. So representation is a pretty big issue. How did I get on this? Oh yeah, so anyway, if your worldview was based on your Vietnam experiences, fair enough, that's your lived experiences, but that's not the only thing that needs to be considered or should be part of the discussion. Other people's perspectives should come in. And sorry, I think Rudy Giuliani, someone made this point, and it's sort of related to this, is that Rudy Giuliani, he worked with the FBI and CIA and sort of before 9/11 and leading up to 9/11. And at that time, there were firewalls between agencies in order to protect information. After 9/11, those firewalls have sort of come down a little bit, and there's more cross-agency cooperation to share information. But Rudy Giuliani hasn't experienced that. His experiences stopped before those transitions happened. So when he approaches the issue, even today, he talks about it like in that old school firewalls way of thinking about it. And the fact is that it's moved on from that. So his representation of reality is actually different from the current reality. You would need somebody who works there now to say, oh, no, Rudy, that's not how we do it anymore. Now the thing is. And when you have a bunch of older guys in a room, all similar experiences, similar backgrounds, similar values, you can't substantively represent the interests of other people that you don't know their experience or their perspectives. Sorry for the coughing. Now I'm looking down more and my nose is running. Let's see. Oh my gosh. Oh, we've gone over time. I have to meet my friend for coffee in an hour. So I'm going to do one last one. I didn't realize this Q&A had actually gone off past 2 o'clock. I was planning on doing the show until 2 and then going after that. Last slander in the UK I can remember was the 3 liberal leaders, the homosexual one, the 1970s. Yeah, yes. Well, there's a lot of interesting British political sex scandals over time. There has been. Question, should we want the GOP to be representative? Yeah, I actually, all right, here's the thing. And this would be my last, okay, that'll be my last question. Giuliani's senile fool, he appears. Yes, he is. He is a senile fool. He appears. I think he's lost a few steps there mentally. Also, he's in the Trump bubble, and he's not really working as a proper attorney. He's working as a sort of a lawyer / PR / defender, apologist for Trump. So I think he is an old fool at this point. All right. After Mitt Romney lost, I think it was, the GOP under Reince Priebus, who turned out to be a total tool of Trump, a Wisconsinite, I spit out his shoes. That guy's a piece of shit. If I ever met him, I'd give him a piece of my mind. Reince Priebus. The best thing, one person I saw was that his initials are RNCPRBS. If you take all the vowels out of Reince Priebus, you get RNCPRBS. And that is exactly what he is through and through. But they did an autopsy. They did a GOP autopsy, and they looked ahead to demographic trends, and they looked at the pattern of Republican voting, and they saw their destiny was not with that they would, as a party, have to change themselves and their values and their policies in order to appeal to a wider market. Is that it? All right, so let's consider the GOP like a product. Let's think about this for a minute, because we're gonna we're going to look at how they've organized this long-term this strategy, because what they've done is, it's not surprising if we know what they've done in the past. So GOPs have a product that they're selling, and it's a product of being anti-abortion, being very Christian, imposing your morality on other people, and being, anti-gay and pro-gun and all of that. And that sells really, really, that's like such a perfect product for evangelical, homophobic, misogynistic pieces of shit who fear basically any kind of perceived loss of social status for being white in America. They have, by virtue of being raised in a white bubble and the values and the communities that they're in, they have a natural sense of they feel like they are the best Americans, right? And everyone else is not quite as good. Maybe their one friend is a good person, but like generally, if you're not white, and that's the product that they are trying to sell to people. So let me get back to the question. So I think there's really a sort of, I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but there's clearly been a brain trust of individuals who have determined a long-term policy, people like the Kochs, who are maybe not affiliated with the GOP, but push it in certain directions, to engage in a policy of gerrymandering, voter suppression, stacking the courts with people who will rubber stamp their unconstitutional laws and their attempts to get one-party rule. So on one hand, you have the GOP faction or school of thought, which is the way we maintain power is to ensure that no matter what the population is, Republicans will always win. And I'll just point to Wisconsin as an example of that. They haven't figured out how to rig the governor's elections yet, but I'm sure they're working on it. And they'll do it through more voter suppression and shutting down polling booths, or purging the voter lists or something else. But they've organized power in such a way that they've got this sort of one track, which is to distort democracy to maintain power. And then you get people who are probably decent. Actually, people don't realize or haven't twigged yet what their party's really about. And they're like, look, demographics are destiny. If we want to stay politically relevant, we have to start to represent these people. And at the point of the Tea Party and at the point of Trump, the Republicans in America kind of stood on the same point of modernization that the British conservatives did with David Cameron. Do you reform and try to move forward, or do you cling to the past? And what we saw was that there were some Republicans who understood that their current client model, their current customer strategy had no long-term sustainability. Eventually, there was just not going to be enough white people to override the votes of everybody else, with just demographics. And their approach was to say, we need to reform our policies, we need to broaden our appeal, we need to moderate, we need to become less racist. And I think that's the Republican Party I want. I want to have a fight with people on the right. That's fine. Like, I'm happy to have those debates in Congress under a system that's fair for all, and with people who are representing, all Americans. What they ran up against, though, was the fucking hardcore racists who said, look, we don't want to have to not be racist. We don't want to have to bring women in. We don't want to have to tolerate people of color in positions of power. So instead, we're going to change the rules. We're just going to rig elections so we can't lose. And then we don't have to change. And that's where we are. And that's why we're seeing that's the attack on democracy. It's one party trying to rewrite the rules for itself and its own interests rather than the interests of the American people. And just to prove this, I don't know if you guys saw, where did I see this? I don't know, I watched so many news shows, but there's a Muslim GOP chairman of a county Republican Party in Texas, I'm going to say. And they're trying to kick him out because he's Muslim. They're too racist to even have a Republican who's a Muslim lead them. If it's not a white man, apparently, It's not good enough. That's your GOP. Fucking disgusting. Missed one of my questions about sex assault. There's so many. I'm sorry. I missed your question. But the problem is, unless you know the timestamp of it, and even my timestamps are screwed up. It's showing me like 14:10, and we've been going for 2 hours. So I'm sorry that I missed one of your questions. Do tag me next time. And GOP marketing makes sense. Okay. He's an infiltrator. Get him? All right. Guys, this has been so much fun. I really am enjoying the Sunday live chats. I want to thank you for listening to me rant. Normally I have Kevin to interrupt me and stop me mid-flow. But here I just go stream of consciousness. But I appreciate your time and attention. I appreciate you guys spending a bit of time on your Sunday with me. I will try to find some way of curating articles in such a way that I can get the right ones up. And if I find the correct ones, for instance, that more recent revelation of priests going back to 1910 or whatever it is, I'll find those and track those down. But otherwise, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. My next goal will be to try to work out the Skype, which didn't go so well. It went kind of okay, but I was having some problems with well, I'll throw this out here in case anybody knows the technical stuff. I've got an NDI app on my phone, which allows me to, as I said, I'm actually using my mobile phone to record this right now. It's like this thing right here is my mobile phone, and then it's running through my OBS, through an NDI connection. Now, the problem is my Skype is also on an NDI converter, or an NDI stream. So when I brought people into my Skype, what happened was my mobile phone flipped over from this current camera to Skype and used the video feed from the Skype NDI to override my mobile phone app. So I'm not quite sure. I might be able to solve the problem by putting on the desktop video webcam. So if I add an external webcam or I use my laptop's webcam, I might be able to run a separate video feed while I'm also running an NDI feed in two separate windows so that they aren't clashing. But if you have any suggestions on that, this is a seriously niche technical question. So, but if you know the answer, you can put it in the comments below, as I do read them. All right. Thank you, everyone who stopped by. Thank you, Dorian, for saying thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you to Hooven, and thank you to Larry Yelling Man. All of you guys. Appreciate you guys having some time on a Saturday to help me learn how bad I am still on this stuff. So until next time, guys, I've been Kristi. You've been awesome. Have a great Sunday. Thank you, people in the chat. Thank you, people watching in the future. I'm sure Kevin and I will be doing a happy hour, but we don't have anything booked. So until next time, bye, guys. Did I say you were awesome? I'm going to end on that. You guys, totally awesome.